Alright, so we have a new episode of Tulsa King, and the plot for it is pretty much this. A family member from Dwight's past surprises him in Tulsa. Meanwhile, his newfound success draws attention from the Kansas City mob. Alright, so we start off the episode with Mitch singing in Dwight's club. And to be honest with you guys, he wasn't that bad. But then we get another cut to a cowboy who's basically gambling money. Or just gambling cards or whatever, and basically he is not doing well. And he walks by Dwight's and you can tell that there's some history there. And then we obviously cut to the theme song. After the theme song, Tyson is rapping in his car, and he's obviously waiting for Dwight to get out. But it turns out that the feds are actually listening to them or just watching them. And the plan is for Dwight to actually pretend that he's going into Tyson's car, but he ends up going into Tina's. But because the TSA or the feds are the feds, they end up catching on to that pretty quickly and follow them anyway. We end up going to this new house, and it turns out that Tina wants to buy a new house for her family, but she does have some reservations because of her father. And whether or not he's going to be there, because we end up finding out later on that Tina wants to buy this house because of Dwight and because she wants to spend time with her dad. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I still don't know this character's name, but basically the guy from like the Captain America franchise. And he ends up finding more information about this Dwight guy, and it seems like he's going to start slowly imposing his will throughout these episodes and potentially become the new villain. But then we cut to the actual villain of the series so far, who hires a really good USA attorney who said that he should basically guaranteed or close to guarantee put Dwight in jail, which is all this villain needs to hear. Then we cut to the trial, and it turns out, I'm just going to cut to the point here, or cut to the chase, Dwight becomes his own attorney because he doesn't trust anybody. Obviously, because the last time he trusted an attorney, he ended up being in jail for 25 years, so I don't blame him. But just like myself, a lot of people in the episode are kind of questioning this decision, and in my opinion, the character might be a little bit too overconfident. And the jury begins next week, of course. Then Bill, who's actually the guy from the Captain America movies, warns Cheeky about Tulsa and how this new guy, Dwight, is basically taking over his property. But also, Cheeky basically calls out Bill about not saying anything about his dad dying and basically just being respectful and stuff like that. He just hasn't reached out to him that much. But once again, Bill's the one that basically threatens Cheeky about what's going on. Then we cut to Dwight and Bodhi trying to figure out an angle for his case. And basically his angle is going to be geared towards women and try to make his case for women, which is like romance and stuff like that. And they do weigh the options for the men, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like he cares that much. Then we cut to a funny joke about Tyson, which is basically like some guy said that he didn't want to buy something, or he didn't want Tyson to get anything from him because he thought he was going to steal it or something. And then the character, I forget her name, basically said that you're proving the guy's point, which I thought was pretty funny. I'm sorry if that's not the best explanation because I'm recording this at 5 a.m. again. But then it turns out that the crew, which is basically Mitch, Tyson, basically everybody you know, is stealing like car converters. So I guess they could get like a business angle for Dwight and on the cowboy guy. Then we cut to Tina, who actually ends up buying the house, which is still something that she's a little bit questionable about because she doesn't know the fate of Dwight's future and just what could happen to her or her children in general because of where they're living. And no, Tulsa is not like a crazy place to live in, but just like the environment that Dwight has created for the people that he loves and cares about. But then Dwight ends up visiting the guy from the first episode and offers him $7.5 million to help him. But I think his name was Harvey, and he's trying to like, somewhat sway Dwight and try to like get some business acumen, but the guy's in jail, so he doesn't really have a choice. Then Dwight and Tyson actually end up going to the bank so that they can get that $7.5 million. But because Dwight lives in the past in a lot of ways, which is one of the funny aspects of the show, he obviously doesn't end up getting that money. And I just found the whole situation really hilarious with the bank person basically listing every single step that it would take for Dwight to get this money. And he basically gives up. And then he goes on a tangent about like Thomas Edison and the light bulb, which ends up leading to nothing. Also, the feds are nearby as well. Then Dwight visits his sister. And once again, they talk about Tina and her concerns through her sister, of course. Or should I say his sister? And basically, Dwight's sister is basically saying what I've been saying this entire episode, which is about how concerned Tina is for him and how he should basically try to like cooperate with the feds so that he's not in jail for too long. Then we get cut to the cowboy basically visiting Dwight's bar, basically without no hesitation trying to figure out a way to like please him. And at least off of my memory, it turns out that the cowboy doesn't really want much, but Dwight basically just wants his family, or at least Tina and the kids, to have a new car, and he obviously complies. But all he wants is his converters. But by the end of the episode, he doesn't actually end up getting all of them. Then Armand reluctantly pays Dwight, and you can tell every fiber of his body is not happy about it. Then we cut to Dwight actually talking to the USA attorney, basically trying to figure out a way to cooperate with the, the jury system or whatever, and hopefully find a way to do this without having to actually serve time in jail, or at least a little bit of jail. But the attorney is not going for that, and it's very much clear that this guy's trying to put Dwight behind bars for a long time. And knowing Dwight, that conversation does not go anywhere. And like I said before, Mitch actually ends up meeting with the cowboy. Not Mitch, but I did say the cowboy gets half of his converter because Mitch is obviously refusing to give it back to him. And I'm not remembering the details here, but basically Mitch offers the cowboy guy something. And the cowboy guy is basically more inclined to do it because he's thinking about leaving for Florida with his wife. So we'll see where that goes in the future. But then Bodie actually ends up getting made fun of in the next scene because he's breaking down one of the aspects of the new business for Dwight and his crew members. And outside of Dwight, the rest of the crew members just laugh because he's not there, of course. He's doing something else. And I'm not remembering the artist's name, but he's a very well-known artist. At least I think so. And this was basically like a shoehorn cameo that I didn't really care for that much, but the guy does have a nice voice. Then Dwight has to actually sleep at Tyson's home because the police are actually outside or near them. Actually, I'm completely wrong here. It turns out that there's like a reporter outside of like Dwight's like hotel building or house or whatever, and they're not trying to deal with that. And I actually find it funny that Dwight just wakes up in this like teenage girl's like bedroom. And he also might have been in that girl's like pajama clothes or something. And then Dwight actually ends up reading the newspaper after Tyson's dad takes shots at him. And there's something about like a Chinese something going on with like the, marijuana business. I don't know what that meant, but I found that pretty interesting. And Dwight's look obviously was not a happy one. Then the episode actually ends off with Cheeky basically saying that he's going for Dwight once again. And one of the people within the crew, I'm forgetting the name, I'm sorry, it's 5 a.m., agrees. He doesn't agree, but he doesn't disagree either. So in the Mafia, I guess that's like an agree. But knowing this show, anything could happen. So overall, this episode was pretty decent outside of that cameo or appearance. And yeah, next week should be interesting.